Good afternoon, everyone. This is Careers in Data Science and Data Analytics. We have 5 amazing panelists for you today. We're so glad you can be here with us. Michelle, if you want to take down the slide, I'm going to spotlight our panelists. And then you'll be able to see everybody on the screen. All right, so those are our 5 panelists. We have great questions and I know they have great answers. Thank you everyone for attending. Again, if you have questions as we go, please send them in the chat to Michelle Sloan. She's listed as one of the co-hosts and we will get to your questions as well. But we're gonna start off first. We're gonna ask that our panelists tell us a little bit more about who they are, what they do, and the nature of their organization and the job that they do. And I'm going to start with Deborah, since you're first on my screen here to start.
That sounds great. Welcome, everyone. I'm delighted to be here. My name is Deborah Fury. I go by Deb typically. I work for a company called Blend 360, where I lead strategy. But at our company, which is about, I don't know, 70 to 80% of the work we do is data science, strategy means something very specific, which is how companies use data science and analytics to really drive major business change. And in our world, we tend to work a lot in the commercial space. My background prior to that was at a company called Merkle, big media data science shop and marketing shop. And then prior to that, at companies like PricewaterhouseCoopers and Gemini, where I was in management consulting across a number of industries. Delighted to be here to speak with you today.
Thanks, Deb. Elisha, would you like to go next?
Of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Elisha. I work at Morgan Stanley. My current position is a data analyst within the Global Financial Crimes Department, and I work on the Financial Intelligence Unit. And pretty much what we do there is we investigate within our accounts at Morgan Stanley. We look for things such as money laundering, fraud, and we also use things that are within the news to help us get leads on possible things that we need to investigate on and make sure Morgan Stanley is not in the news. And really much what I do in my role, I use data analytics to get the information from our accounts. And so it's easier to see, what are our transactions looking like? What does our client base look like? And also, if other teams need help looking at that, we tried our best to make the data easy for everyone to look at. And I think that's something, a lot of us strive in data analytics, so anyone can analyze it and be able to manipulate it.
Thank you. Dee, you're up next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dee Zhu. I work for the Baltimore Orioles, which is a professional baseball team in Baltimore. Specifically, I work in their baseball operations analytics department. And what I do is I'm the baseball systems manager. So baseball operations is the department that decides what players to draft, what players to sign, all the training of the players, player development, scouting, who to sign to the roster, who to trade for, stuff like that. And what the analytics department tries to do is it uses data to help drive those decisions. So using data to figure out who should play what position, who to draft, who to sign, how defenses should be set up, how pitchers should be throwing their pitches. And what I do specifically is I manage the software development team, which is we are in charge of getting all the baseball data out there in the world and getting it into our database and then organizing it and presenting it on an internal website for everybody else in baseball operations to use that data to help drive their decision making.
Great, thank you. Gabby?
Hi everyone, my name is Gabby Rivas. I work as a data analyst at MedStar Georgetown University Hospital, specifically within the quality and safety department. So a lot of the work that I do revolves around saving lives, never ending. And so we work with housing and work and getting all the data from the different data warehouses that we have to make reports, specifically Tableau dashboards for senior management. And so although the hospital isn't analytically driven, we do a lot of work within our department to do the best we can with outcomes data and work with CMS programs along with other magnet designated programs that we do.
Great, thanks. And last but not least, Jacob.
Hey everyone, my name is Jacob. I'm a data scientist at a company called Ntrepid. What Ntrepid does is we build products that help with like online privacy and online information issues, specifically in like the social media space. So like one of the use cases for our products is like federal investigators trying to find Russians pretending to be Americans on Facebook. I specifically work on a research and development team, trying to incorporate analytics and data science kind of into a lot of our existing products.
Thank you so much. Alrighty, so first actual question. What advice do you have for a student seeking to gain experience in this field? What specific hiring strategies, for example, maybe networking or joining professional associations, would be helpful for students to be aware of? Does anybody want to start? If not, I can call on people. That's fine too.
Start.
I can start.
Go ahead.
So for us, what we look for, our biggest thing we look for is actually passion for baseball. So when we want to hire for our analytics department, we want to know that you're passionate about baseball. And the thing that we look for is if you're doing projects on your own that are baseball related. So there's a ton of public baseball data out there. There's all this public baseball data. So if you do projects, you just write code to go find it, get it, analyze it. So that's what we really look for. And there's a ton of websites where you can publish your research findings, and we basically read all these websites, and there's a ton of people who work in the baseball analytics industry who work for a team where they started out writing their research findings on these public websites. So that's what we really look for. And obviously we like the technical math degree. So math, statistics, computer science, very math heavy finance and economics, physics. So we like that. And so that's sort of what we're looking for, is just the passion for baseball. And for that to show that, you got to be doing like projects that show that you really want to work in baseball.
That's great. I can't tell you, Dee, how many candidates we've had come interview from us who have used baseball case studies or models that they've created as one of their stories when they come in and sort of have to do case-based reviews with us. So I think similarly, and in fact, our company too is also looking for pretty similar backgrounds, right? So certainly people with data science experience, people who've had a couple of internships where they've been working with R and Python and some of the other tools, but also generally for Blend, and granted, we're sort of an agency, so we're different than some of the other panelists here. We're looking for people who have sort of a passion for marketing and sort of a curiosity. One of the things that that generally people working in an organization like ours are going to have different clients. We've got clients in financial services and retail and healthcare and hospitality, at least prior to COVID. And so, being curious and interested in all notion of sort of customer data and customer modeling is obviously something we look forward to, or look for rather, in candidates. And candidates who have either come up with their own models, who've done hackathons, who've had internships. that speaks a lot, just because they've had lots of hands-on experience. And then we will bring in people and have them build that hands-on experience very quickly with us as well.
I would say, as far as my team, the financial intelligence unit, it's a small team at Morgan Stanley. I feel that our team is very much so mixed in what we've all been involved as far as our what we majored in school and in our other degrees. As far as for me, I majored in math, and then I also have research experience at Johns Hopkins. Far as I personally learned Python in school, and I use MATLAB. So far as with data analytics, my team likes that Python. And then if you have experience with SQL as well, or you're able to learn those sort of languages, that would be great. Also, it helps if you do have some sort of investigative or research experience, because you're able to apply it. That's what they saw in me, because although my research had nothing to do with investigations, it had to do with diabetes ketoacidosis. But they saw that I was able to, use that experience and apply it here. So because when you're researching, it's pretty much investigating. So I've at Morgan Stanley, they are very open to whatever you were involved in, and you're able to apply it.
Yeah, and I basically agree with what everyone's saying. I think one of the main things we look for is like passion and learning. So like in this field, in any tech field, like you're always going to be learning. There's always going to be new stuff, new models, new algorithms, new languages. So if you can demonstrate like that you have a passion for the field and that you're constantly trying to like learn more about the field, then like that's great. Like obviously projects on your own are great. And for projects on your own, one thing that I've found that always helps is picking a subject that you're passionate about and then figuring out the project that you want to do about it. Especially when you're just starting out, it's really hard to just code for the sake of coding. So if you actually care about the end result, I think that is usually like a pretty good project to pick.
Yeah, I kind of want to piggyback off that last comment. So I think it's great, learning all these different skill sets in terms of technical skills, but I think what really sets you apart is specializing in data analytics, because it's such a big field. So sometimes being a subject matter expert in that field brings additional value that maybe another candidate might not have. So for me, I love to live in the sphere of healthcare, and that has been a benefit because there's not a lot of people who love healthcare and data analytics. So that's just an advantage that sometimes comes in handy.
Great, thank you. I'm going to ask one more of my questions, and then we'll see if there are any student questions that have been submitted. But the question I have next, how has this field been affected by COVID-19? And then related to that specific, or specifically the world we're living in right now, what advice maybe would you have for students seeking internships or jobs that might have been different, pre-COVID-19? And I know, Deb, you kind of hit on this a little bit in your answer. So would you mind starting?
No, I don't at all. And I think it's interesting, right? For us, there's been a sort of a challenging impact and then a really positive impact, right? On the challenging side, we had 3 very large clients in the hospitality industry, 2 in hotels and 1 in cruise lines. And as you can imagine, we've had to watch our clients, and really, we're very close with our clients because we work really closely. So we've had to watch a lot of people that we have very strong relationships with have a really tough time, right? And we've also obviously had some of those clients at least go away temporarily while they deal, with the scenario. I know some of them are coming back, but that's been an impact. And I don't know how that affects all of you students, but I think that it's just being aware, right, that there are some industries that even if you really want to be in that industry may not be the best candidate for the moment. So it's pretty obvious to sort of think through that. On the positive side, we have done a lot of analytics around COVID, right? The incidence of COVID across the country. We've used a lot of the data from like the New York Times analysis and from Johns Hopkins and from a variety of other sources. And we've created a series of models to help our clients sort of navigate who to talk to, where to talk to, sort of when to talk to them about offerings that are, that they want to promote in the marketplace. And so that sort of, and just sort of help educate them around their strategy. So that's been very positive. It's been a way that we've been able to engage clients with some different concepts, right, about targeting in the marketplace. So that's been positive. I think for folks looking for roles, I think just being eminently aware of what's going on with the types of companies that you're speaking with and being selective. I think that's probably the best guidance I can.
Great, thanks. Dee, what about you? I mean, we all know how COVID has really changed sports in general these days, but have you seen a difference in your work given what's going on?
Yeah, so obviously, with Major League Baseball, there were no fans during the season, and the season was shortened. So that's our biggest impact. So for the sport, it's just there's this huge loss of revenue, and so what we're seeing now is actually a lot of teams are cutting staff, which is unfortunate. So that's our biggest impact, which further down the line, it means the hiring is going to slow down a lot. There's this cut in staff and hiring slowing down. So there's not going to be as many positions open specifically for baseball teams. So it's going to be a lot harder to find a job with a baseball team if that's something you really want to do. Same with the other sports. It's probably going to be a lot harder to find jobs with a sports team. That being said, most teams still are offering internships. So if that's something you're interested in, you can still be on the lookout for internships with sports teams. It's just that you have to keep in mind that there's going to be a lot of people applying. So you're going to have to try and do things to make yourself stand out, like either like projects I mentioned before. But it's just going to be difficult. So.
I would say I would piggyback off of Dee. Loss of revenue. Everyone was looking at the stocks at Morgan Stanley. I'm sure you all seen what the stocks and the stock market looked like. Everyone was losing money. I know I lost money in my 401k, but anyways, so that's I think also with Morgan Stanley, I think it really put in perspective how I love this firm, because all of us were able to keep our positions within this pandemic. I will say also more work was created because within COVID, people find more ways to be corrupt, and using COVID as the answer or an excuse or so. Definitely helps with investigations. And I would say that if you are looking for a job within any department within Morgan Stanley, you should really look into the rotational analyst program. I believe that they're still running those, and also I believe at UMD, I'm pretty sure Morgan Stanley recruits heavily at UMD. Actually, I know for a fact they do. I would say go to the career fairs, and thank you note goes a long way. Yes. So send those out, or a nice email.
Thanks for the career fair plug too.
I can speak on behalf of like healthcare and hospital business side of things. I think, unfortunately, a lot of people think that there is an increase in job opportunities right now, but a lot of the money has been allocated for clinical professionals, so nurses, nursing assistants, doctors, and not a lot towards analytics departments. So during that time, we found ourselves being a little bit overworked just because we had a lot of ad hoc reporting to do over COVID metrics. And so there was a little bit more burden on our team. And I wouldn't say that there is an increase in job opportunities right now, but maybe if you focus on an organization that does more their mission is to do analytical work for healthcare companies, you might have a better chance. But I think it's iffy with hospital and healthcare and provider. So.
Just to build on that too, I'll just sort of add a couple things. Like, there are companies right now that are trying to deal obviously with telehealth. There's companies that are trying to deal with online grocery delivery, like, any of these sort of new companies or sort of startups that are trying to sort of fill the gap between services and solutions to the home or, to people working remotely are going to be pretty interesting places, right? That are going to be, aggressively trying to do different types of modeling and analytics, because generally a lot of their services are going to be delivered digitally. So that's another sort of filter. I mean, there's some research obviously that we go into, but that's another filter you all should be thinking about, which is, if you're looking for internships, we have a client right now, it's like an online grocer in New York City, and they were sort of doing okay, for a long time, before COVID. When COVID hit, they literally like doubled in size within like 2 months, and the analytics needs kind of, grew dramatically. So really get thoughtful, right, for internships, about companies that are trying to get into and address some of the challenges that we're seeing in the market right now.
Yeah, for us, hiring is definitely down. We're just not looking to expand at the moment, but I would say a thing to keep in mind when you're kind of entering the workforce, especially in this field, is that sometimes you kind of have to work your way up. And like my first job out of college did not have data in the title at all. But I just looked for ways on different projects that I could implement like analytics solutions. And I kind of built my resume up that way. So it's not the end of the world if you can't get a flashy data analyst or data science job, right out of undergrad. Just like if you can stay in anything technical and kind of use, I think everyone kind of looks for this anyways, like creative ways to use analytics and data science, because that's what every organization is looking for. If you can do that at an internship or a first job, you're going to set yourself apart and really help yourself. So like I said, it's not the end of the world if your first job or two isn't your dream job. Most people, it's not.
Yeah, I think that's an important point to make. Thanks, Jacob. Michelle, do we have any questions from students yet?
We do. One question is, what non-technical skills are important to be successful in data science?
Should I go first again, just to keep us moving? That's a really, really, really great question, right? So I think that what we see a lot of times, and we hire a lot of folks just like you guys, right, coming directly out of, out of your program there. We see a lot of people who are technically super strong, right, really savvy, able to, really work through models and such. But, the other part of what we need to do in our business, and certainly in some of the other panelist business, we need to sort of share that information, sort of convey that information in a way that's meaningful and understandable to people who are not technical and who in some cases are not data scientists. And I think, obviously, they're business people, they may be executives. So this notion of sort of, and it takes time to learn this. This is not something you can just go study, in 6 months, right? But it's something that you should strive for, which is this ability to translate the insights and the finding, and to some degree, the methodology of a model, a propensity model or clone model. Like, how do you explain that to someone who doesn't understand what that is and why they need it, right? And then ultimately, like, how that's going to work in their business. That sort of translator role or capability is super important as you move up, even into more senior roles in a data science capacity, right? The most effective leaders in data science clearly can do that and tell the story around data. So I think that's really important. And I think also, working with different types of people, you're going to find, and I'm sure you guys are learning this from being in school, but, there are people of different styles, right? And being able to sort of work constructively with others, even though it's challenging and it's competitive and, all there's a lot going on, working on yourself in terms of how you work with others becomes increasingly important as well in order to be successful. So those would be my two points.
Yeah, I think you did a great job of summarizing that. I don't really have much to add other than there have been instances when we've been hiring and we have taken people who convey better communication skills or more of a team player over the more technical person. So it really does matter. And there have also been instances where I have been hired in a position where like in my previous roles, where I didn't have the technical skills, but I showed the eagerness to learn, and my personality just was a good fit for the team, and I was given the position. So do take that into account. Sometimes it matters more.
I would say I agree with Deb and Gabby about the communication. You really have to, you can't just put a model in front of someone that has never experienced this or anything before, maybe working in a different department. And that's something that you really do learn in school. You learn that you have to make this, and in research, you have to make this easy enough for everyone, for the common person to understand your work. And also within us working from home, you can't necessarily talk to some, like walk over to their desk. You have to make sure that your communication is on point. And really, you're gonna have to learn what this new teamwork looks like. Also, I would say, as far as with my team, it's project-based. It's more taking the initiative to make work for yourself. Far as, like I said, we get leads from the news, maybe, or something that your manager may have mentioned. Maybe taking that extra step to actually look into it. We on financial intelligence unit, we tend to go on our own little rabbit holes and look for things that we can create for ourselves, work projects. And although a lot of our projects don't necessarily have hard deadlines, we are working with each other and we're figuring out better ways to use the data and to come with a better end result every time.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think communication has got to be the number one skill. But there's definitely a few other ones. Like I think like having like a desire to learn, kind of what I was talking about earlier, is just like massive. Like everything's gonna change in 5 to 10 years. We probably won't be using Python. So it's just like you have to always be learning and like always be upskilling yourself. Like Coursera, like there's tons of free stuff, YouTube, like everything you can get your hands on. Like just like keep learning, and that'll shine through. And then I would just say, yeah, passion, just like really like the field, like what you're doing, like the stuff, like the models, like that shines through in job interviews and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree with what everyone else has said already. We have to take what we do and explain it to baseball coaches and baseball players who may not be as technical. And so if you want to try and get a player to change something, you really have to be able to communicate that well to the player, and same with the coaches. So that communication is really key. And then, like I said earlier, passion really too, because our industry does not pay as well as the other industries. So you're going to be working long hours for not good pay. So you really have to have a passion for baseball.
Yeah, and to add one more comment, it's not just communication, but like business communication. So like being able to put yourself in the business's shoes and be like, why should this business care about what I'm doing? Am I saving them money? Am I making what they're doing more efficient? Am I giving them an idea for a new product? So like, yeah, not just like yield communication, but like really trying to think about the why. And yeah.
Great, thank you. Michelle, did we have more questions?
Sure do. Okay, the next question is, how much does graduate school experience factor into an applicant's resume?
Yeah, I'll answer quickly. I think it's important, right? I think that, we're obviously looking at graduate school experience. I think that it is fair to say, however, that we've got two guys right now who joined our company as undergraduates who were just rock star data scientists. Like it's just in their blood, and we didn't care because when they did their interviews with us and we have people do case reviews, right, and take a technical test, they totally aced all of it. Both of them now are actually underway getting their master's degrees. So it sort of speaks to, I think, Jacob's point about passion, right? These were folks that really love this stuff, and we're all in, right? So I do think graduate school is going to give you experience and access to resources. It's going to give you access to internships opportunities, and obviously we like all that stuff, right? But I think that you know, having the skill and really focusing on that skill and the learning goes pretty darn far. And you know, we will definitely take, and I think other companies will too. You know, we'll take people who have experience in that regard as well.
For us, it helps, but it's not critical, I guess, because so like for us, we have 9 full-time people, and I think 3 of us have masters. I do not personally have a master's, and we don't have any PhDs on our team. So it's not, it helps, but it's not really critical. But if you do get like I know some teams only will hire full-time people with PhDs. So if you go get like a math PhD, you'll get teams talking to you. That's yeah, but you got to go get a math PhD, which is not an easy thing to do. So it's not critical, but it does help. Most of our new hires end up doing internships for us. So like a lot of PhD grads don't want to work as interns first before converting to full-time, just because intern pay is even lower than PhD pay. So so a lot of times, like our interns when we hire interns, it ends up being a lot of college students or recent grads, and then they stay on full-time or something. So
Yeah, in my experience, it's completely dependent on the team. I think and just the organization. I think some organizations highly value it, some don't. In my experience, I think some of the best data scientists I've met don't have anything past undergrad. And some of the best data scientists I've met have PhDs. So it really just depends on the person, the organization. But on the topic of grad school, I think working a couple years in the workforce and then doing grad school, which is what I did. I'm so thankful I did that and didn't just go to grad school right out of undergrad. Because truly in undergrad, you have no idea what the workforce is like. You really don't know what you want to do. You know, my first day, I thought I wanted to do this one thing. My first day, I was like, I never want to fucking do this again. Sorry. So that was a big wake up to me. I think a lot of people are going to see that too. And from other people I've talked to in analytics, people are seeing that in analytics where some people thought they really wanted to do analytics and wow, this is really boring, but some of us love it. So I'd say, if you have the opportunity to take a couple years, work, and then kind of figure out your career and then do grad school after that.
Yeah, so it seems like some people here are more in a managerial position, so they're in a part of the hiring process. So as an applicant, I have a background in a social science, and I am not in a master's degree for data science specifically. So I think that if you don't have an undergraduate degree in a hard science, so physics, math, actuarial sciences, I would highly recommend going to get a master's degree, just so that you have those skill sets and you're learning a foundation that you might have lacked in your undergrad. So that's one piece of advice I would give strictly to those who had an undergrad degree in social sciences.
I agree. Far as on my team, we have 2 lawyers, I believe, and then I don't have a graduate degree. I majored in math. Although I do plan on going back to school, our team, it just really depends on if you're able to learn it. If you can, there are some jobs that they give you the opportunity to learn on the job, and there's others where that they will require. I feel that at my firm, there's pretty diverse in what everyone is in, and not just although you can apply data analytics in different areas, it doesn't necessarily mean that you went to school for it. I agree with Gabby as far as with the hard science undergraduate degree helps too, because far as a lot of they saw that I was able to learn, far as Morgan Stanley saw that I was able to learn another language that applies to the firm and to mine data. And so.
Great, thank you. Michelle, do we still have questions from students?
We do. Do data analysts work with math on a regular basis like data scientists? And if so, what kind of math do they use?
I'm probably not the best person to answer that. I'm gonna punt.
So I've only been in a data analyst role, so I can only speak to that. I can't speak on behalf of data scientists, but so a lot of times when you're building reports, you're working off of KPIs. And so these are key performance indicators that the company is interested in. And so you have to take into account variances, like a lot of finance terms, I think is what I mean by that. But the reason I say that you should major in a hard science is because, like, for example, computer programmers, a lot of what you're doing is logic based, and that's skills that you're learning in a computer science program or a data science program. And then that's transferable when you're coding in R or Python or SQL or whatever it is. So it's not so much the actual math, but it's more of the building blocks that come with math, the analytical reasoning or the logic building. So yes and no, there's a fair amount of math, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's like matrices or linear algebra. It just depends, really.
Our analysts build models. That's basically their whole job, is to build models. So it's a lot of it. Granted, nowadays when you build models, there's all these like Python and R packages and whatnot. But if you really want to understand your models and know what they're doing and know what drawbacks they have and what advantages they have, you really need a strong math background. So all of our analysts have at least an undergrad math degree, because all your models that you do, so like they use like all these regressions and trees and neural networks and k-means and all that stuff, and that's all built on a bunch of statistics and math and linear algebra. So all our analysts they just build models all day. So there's not like, you're not like doing linear algebra, but you're doing statistics and you're using models that are built off statistics and linear algebra. And I don't think we really make a difference between data analysts and data scientists. Data science is sort of just a catch-all, really super broad term. So I guess if you want to call them data scientists, you can call them data scientists. But yeah, for us, there's not really a difference.
I'll just sort of build on that, because I think that our data science is I think as you described, is, pretty similar, right? Like they're doing models all day long, they're using logic and math and such. We're seeing a lot of interest right now in the marketplace too, though, for data engineers. So it's actually it's like the engineering and organization and structuring of data pre-model, which is actually one of the hardest things for companies to do. I mean, that's not to say that models are easy, but it's like, once you've gotten to the modeling part, you've probably gotten 2/3 of the hard parts done, right? So this notion of sort of people who have skills in, obviously, the technology, they understand the logic, and they're able to sort of engineer data. That's just another trend we're seeing. It's a little bit less math, it's more tech, but you have to understand how the models are built in order to do that effectively.
So that's actually my background is in data engineering.
It's engineering. Yeah.
And so we have all our analysts who build all the models, but from the software side, from the data engineering standpoint, you have to get this data into a format that the analysts can use. Exactly. So it's a bunch of building software systems to import and clean data, and then set up all these processes where the analysts can sort of use it effectively, and then automatically train models, automatically deploy models. And then once we have the models, you have to automatically apply the model to whatever new data comes in. So there's a lot of like software engineering that's part of data science. I guess, where it's just like the data engineering part of it. So yeah, data engineering is also, if you're doing like computer science and you want to do, computer science is a great background for like data engineering.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a big demand out there. I mean, granted, if you're data science, that's great too, but there's a big demand for this whole space of data engineering. And part of that is being driven off of, all the cloud-based computing, like back in the day, because I'm kind of old, you used to have to build a box and have a computer and like load data into the computer, and then maybe you could start organizing it. Now everything's cloud-based, right? So the rapidness or the speed by which, or velocity by which data is being assembled and disassembled and re-engineered for different kinds of modeling has gone crazy, right? So it's another interesting area to think about.
Yeah, I kind of have an interesting perspective on this question. I think there's like a couple different parts. So at our company, and kind of what I've seen is there is definitely a difference between data analysts and data scientists. How we do it is data analysts do a lot of SQL and data cleaning, and the data analyst also does a lot of the visualization, so Tableau, Plotly, all that kind of stuff. The data scientists do a lot of the model building, the scientific thinking, so trying to set up the hypothesis, the different testings, interpreting the models, all that kind of stuff. But I do think there's a real problem in how data scientists are hired, in that there's no like actual definition of the job. So I've seen data scientists posting that actually want a data engineer. I've seen the term machine learning engineer, which is a confusing term, because machine learning engineer could mean you're building novel neural networks from scratch. It could mean you're deploying something in AWS. Like it could mean any range of things. So I think if you're interested in doing math and building models, then you should be looking for that in the job descriptions, not necessarily in the job title. Because I think job titles are very misleading. But yeah, I agree that most companies want data engineers first, because you need the infrastructure before you do anything. Yeah, and then specifically about the math, linear algebra is like the foundation for everything in data science. So if you can take a linear algebra class in undergrad, pay a lot of attention and work really hard in it, because I promise it's freaking boring, but those concepts are so important to everything that we do in data science. Like it is so boring to me, but it is so useful. You can't read a data science paper without knowing linear algebra.
And statistics, I think.
Yeah, so I think statistics is super important as well. But just in my personal experience, since I have a friend that likes to say that like linear algebra is the language of data science, and I agree with that. Like it's just how people talk about data science in papers.
I'd say I don't really use my degree in at my job, but I will say that the fact that I did learn Python and the concepts of what actually a computer language is. I took the computer science classes, of course. That did help me within my position because I had to learn SQL on the job. So yes and no, because I feel that the fact that I did my research also in undergrad, that internship really helped me with in my investigative role. But far as math, I not much.
Okay, the next question. What is career development like in data science? Like what are some paths you can take from an entry-level job?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I think there's a couple of paths, right? So there are many major corporations now have analytics teams, as you might imagine. So if you think about companies like CVS Health or Capital One or virtually any major corporation is going to have a data science part of its business. It's often going to have data science that's associated with marketing and commercialization around its financials and product marketing, as well as potentially around development. So there's a whole career path around sort of, becoming a data scientist within a corporation where you're sort of helping either market or develop products or do research or do financial analysis, right? There's that whole sort of, area. I think the other is an agent or sort of a services capacity similar to my background, right? Where you're going in and you're working with multiple clients, solving tough problems, right? You're going in and there are a lot of data science companies out there like Infosys and Mu Sigma. Some of those are obviously overseas. There's a bunch in the States, of course. The companies like Deloitte and Accenture, right? Which have big data science teams that are doing super innovative stuff and solving sort of interesting problems for clients. So that's going to be a little bit more, for the kind of person who likes lots of change, right? And gets really excited about doing different things and having different clients. And then there's, obviously lots of startups and such that need different shapes and colors. Increasingly, of course, in our world, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of companies that are all based on data science. You think about companies like Zipcar or some of the online groceries, obviously Amazon, right? Where their whole business is really data science. So some of the startups or sort of the well-funded mid-sized companies can be in other pathways.
Yeah. Career progression is, one, I think it's really more has to do with like industry and like your subject matter. So a lot of what I see is data scientists learning more about the industry that they're embedded in. And that's kind of their career progression, is moving up in that industry while having like that analytical edge. Also, so we've got a team, we've got data scientists and senior data scientists. And so the senior data scientists are responsible for a lot more like high level thinking. So like, what kind of problems can we even attack? How are we going to attack them? What are going to be, like I said, like our scientific thinking, our hypotheses, how are we going to validate this? What are some potential pitfalls? And then the regular data scientists like myself, we implement these plans. So yeah, a lot of career progression is really, it's more of scientific thinking and being able to manage data science projects. Yeah.
It's similar for us, where when you start out, it's usually like, all right, we want to look into this thing related to, let's say, pitching, and we have someone work on that. And then as you sort of advance, and now you sort of go into the more, you start like brainstorming your own ideas and helping other analysts within our organization like investigate these things. So at first when you start, you're sort of like given projects like, all right, we want to look into this stuff with pitching. And then when you become more senior, it's like, okay, what's the next thing in pitching that we think is important, and do we want to look into it? How do we want to investigate it? What kind of data do we need? And then as you progress more, it becomes, okay, our goal is we want to get our pitching to be better for this or that. And now we have to figure out like, how do we do that? How do we communicate to the coaches that this is what we want to do and this is what we found, and like working with the coaches into getting their ideas of what makes a good pitcher or something. And so like, and then you start sort of like managing the analysts and stuff. So and working with all the other people in the organization to sort of communicate the ideas. So that's sort of like the advancement within our organization.
Alrighty, I think we have time for about one more question with our panelists. And so the last question is, do you find your job rewarding? And hopefully that's a yes. And if so, what do you find rewarding?
I'll go first again. So I love this business, right? Like I love, and I have for years, right? I love always working, I like working with new clients on new problems. That to me is particularly interesting, but I really like working with companies to solve problems based on real data, not based on, opinions or beliefs or, even sort of qualitative sources, but really helping companies use hard data to understand what they should do differently, whether it be how they should market, who they should talk to, what channels they should use, which product features they should evolve. I think that and I don't think every company is ready for that, right? I think it's hard work, but it takes sort of a level of commitment to understanding reality and what the data can tell us about markets and products and customers and such, in such a way that it really helps to drive impact. And I think the other side that's very interesting, of course, is when you create models and do the analytics and then actually see the results, and you're able to predict the results in some cases, or able to show real impact from that model. I think those two things get me, are pretty exciting. And it's always a bit of not so much as a mystery, but it's almost like, it's a challenge, right? There's always this sort of interesting challenge to see if you can sort of show the data and show the reality in the best way possible through the modeling exercises. So that's what I like.
Yeah, I definitely love my job, and specifically I love working in healthcare. That's where my real passion is, and I'm just lucky that I found another passion that I can use my analytics skill set in my job. So my background is in public health, and that means that I'm in the business of improving communities and the well-being of the general public. So the fact that I can do that using math and statistics and reports and pretty graphs, that's really great. And I love the work that I do. And I think that, healthcare in general has a long way to go. It's pretty antiquated when you're talking about data analytics. A lot of the data warehouses are relational databases, and that's kind of the old thing, and it's on its way out. So it's moving towards cloud computing. And if you're interested in that and you want to improve the well-being of patients or healthcare or anything related to health, there's a lot of work to be done. And it's a great place where you can kind of get a bit of the old, how things were structured in the past, and you can apply your new skills, the new skills that are coming out, to do some great things. And so in general, I feel like there's a lot of innovation that can happen in healthcare, and I'm just grateful that I get to be a part of it. And hopefully I get to be a part of it in the future as well.
I'll go. I would definitely find my job rewarding. Really, I know it's more about money and not saving lives necessarily, but protecting people's investments and pretty much, being able to say, oh, I got you just one good time with money laundering, or whether it's that or elder abuse. It's just exciting. Just finding those patterns, or just really being able to deliver that with data analytics. I love it, and I would definitely say do whatever your passion is. And even if you don't know what it is right off the bat, because I didn't, just keep looking, and even if it's something like a hobby, you can always apply it somehow.
So I love my job. I get paid to watch baseball for a living, which is awesome. So it's really awesome just to be able to do all this stuff to help a baseball team win games. Now, frankly, the Orioles are not very good and have not won a whole lot of games since I've been there, but we're getting better. But we do all this work for like the draft players, and it's really awesome to see like, hey, we think these players are good, so we'll go draft them. And it's pretty awesome to be able to say, hey, I helped in finding this guy and drafting him, and then eventually maybe he'll make it to the big leagues and help win a World Series. That's the end goal, and it's really awesome to be able to be a part of something to sort of build towards that goal, where you can do all this analytics and try and get all your players to improve and play better, and eventually hopefully win a World Series. So yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I'll finish it up. So my job is definitely very rewarding. The most rewarding part is being able to use my creative juices and apply new solutions to new problems. I think that is by far the most fun part about being a data scientist, is especially right now. There's tons of fields and tons of problems that could very easily have analytics in them that people just haven't done yet. And so that is just a very rewarding thing for me.
Thank you so much. As I mentioned, I think before, I always learn so much with these, and I continue to. Thank you so much to our panelists for sharing all of this great information. Thank you to our students for attending. Again, to our students, if you haven't had a chance to register, I'm sticking the link in the chat right now. Just take a moment to click on that, enter the access number 1234, and then type your UID number so we know who was here. But thank you, everyone. Thank you, Michelle, for helping out too, and being my support today. This, as I mentioned before, it was or is being recorded, so it will be up on our YouTube channel, UMD Career Center, in just a few days. Or if you have trouble finding it, reach out to me. Michelle, would you list the other screen so they can see our contact information should anyone have other questions? And if you missed it, some of our panelists put their LinkedIn in the chat. So if you want to follow up with them, that'll be a great way to do that. And then if you have questions or concerns beyond that, you can certainly reach out to Michelle or myself, whether or not you are in CMNS or not, or BSOS. I'm willing to answer questions or field you to the right person. But that concludes our program. Again, thank you so much to our panelists for spending time with us. I really appreciate it. Have a great evening, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for